What is going on, guys? Today in this video, we will be discussing on whether or not it canonically makes more sense for Lee to save Doug or Carly. But before we start, it is important to mention that each of these choices ultimately lead to the same outcome, with neither choice giving you an advantage over the other. This analysis is purely for canon purposes only. So with that being said, let's begin. We first meet Doug at Lee's parents' convenience store after Lee and Kenny's family are kicked out of Herschel's ranch after Lee and Kenny failed to save Herschel's son, Sean.
Please, just go.
Get out and never come back.
From our first encounters with Doug, he appears to be awkward, intelligent, and a tech enthusiast, who first helps Lee to successfully work a remote control, in which Lee finds earlier on. This help ultimately leads to Lee successfully retrieving the storeroom keys from Lee's brother's corpse.
There we go.
However, shortly after finding the keys to the pharmacy's storerooms, an alarm sets off which sets the whole group scrambling and trying to hold the walkers off for as long as possible. Shortly after this, Lee is left with a very difficult decision on whether or not to save Doug or Carly. But for now, we will be saving Doug. Shortly after saving Doug, the group finds an abandoned motel in which they convert into a fort to help protect them from walkers. The next day, Doug further demonstrates his intelligence, constructing a bell-ringing warning system designed to warn the group of oncoming threats. This warning system also helped to alert the group of the St. John brothers' presence. Unlike Doug, Carly does not construct a bell warning system, and instead primarily relies on firearms to warn off threats, which in my opinion isn't the best solution. For example, many people in Lee's group are already carrying firearms, which makes Carly's defense less useful and unique when it comes to fending off threats. On top of this, it has the potential to aggravate or escalate the situation. In conclusion, Doug's bell system appears to be the better defense system here. Eventually, Lee and the group decide to take the St. John brothers up on their offer and head to the dairy farm. A bunch of events unfold here which aren't entirely relevant to this video, so for the purpose of this video, I'll skip through the not-so-important parts. Eventually, what soon follows is Mark gets shot with an arrow by the bandits, Mark gets taken into the St. John homestead, and is supposed to be getting treated for his injuries. But in a shocking turn of events, Lee discovers that the St. Johns are not who they say they are, and are instead cannibals who have been slowly eating Mark, along with everyone else sitting at the dinner table. Eventually, Lee and Andrew St. John have a showdown, when suddenly, just as Lee finds himself in trouble, Doug begins to shine a laser in Andrew St. John's eyes, which temporarily blinds Andrew, giving Lee enough time to take Andrew down. This decision ultimately saves Lee. It is important to mention that if you choose to save Carly, she saves Lee as well, but instead of using a laser pointer, she uses a gun to shoot Andrew St. John instead. Soon, after Lee defeats the St. John family, the distraught group makes their way back to the motel parking lot, where Lily discovers that someone within their group has been stealing supplies and leaving them out for the bandits. After this, the group's base is raided by the bandits. After a small face-off, Lily shoots one of the bandits shortly after, followed by Doug, with a brief moment of hesitation. However, if you choose to save Carly, she acts with a much more quicker response, not hesitating once. It is here where we can see the different potentials of Doug and Carly, with Carly being much more natural and fast-acting in weaponry high-adrenaline combat situations, and Doug being much more hesitant and calculating. Shortly after defeating the bandits, the group decide to leave on the RV, and Lily becomes increasingly frustrated at the idea that someone from within their group had been working with the bandits and stealing the group's supplies. An argument soon breaks out between Lee, Lily, Ben, and Doug, with Doug trying hard to de-escalate the situation. Eventually, Lily attempts to shoot Ben, but Ben is quickly shielded by Doug, and ultimately Doug is killed. However, if you choose to save Carly instead of Doug, Carly does not attempt to shield Ben. Instead, she takes the verbal route, insulting and mocking Lily. Lily also shoots Carly. Now let's take a look at the pros and cons of Doug. We know that Doug is intelligent, resourceful, innovative, and has expertise in technology and mechanics. Doug is also much more calmer than Carley and tries hard to de-escalate the situation between Ben and Lily. Now let's take a look at the cons. Doug has poor combat utility skills. He is also much more hesitant to act in high-risk adrenaline situations, which in the middle of a zombie apocalypse is critical, as it can potentially mean saving a group member's life. It is also important to mention that compared to Carley, Doug has less screen time and character lines. On top of this, other characters don't treat Doug's survival as significantly as Carley's. Now let's move on to Carley. We first meet Carley outside Lee's parents' convenience store, around the same time as we meet Doug. Our first introduction to Carley is her saving Lee and the group from Walkers. She soon lets us into the store, and our next interactions with Carley are her introducing us to the group. Shortly after, she finds Lee alone and tells him that she is a reporter and knows what he did. Well, because, spoiler alert, Lee is wanted by the police. This moment is important, as it could potentially lead to Lee, or the player, choosing to save Doug instead of Carley, due to the risk of her potentially telling the rest of the group of Lee's secret. Eventually, Lee's parents' convenience store is attacked by walkers, same as earlier on. But this time, we will be saving Carley. Fast forward over the coming days. It is clear to the player that there is somewhat of a romantic connection between Lee and Carley. For example, Carley and Lee often open up to each other. On top of this, there is a unique cutscene that plays after Lee is tasked with handing out the food. If you decide to try and hand Carley food, she will simply refuse and insist that Lee keeps the food for himself. This demonstrates that not only does Carley care for Lee's mental health, but physical health as well. During another cutscene with Carley, she invites Lee up the motel stairs and tells Lee that she's been thinking a lot about him. Carley then tells Lee that he should be honest with the rest of the group and tell them about his past. Shortly after this, Carley kisses Lee, highlighting to the player the unique bond and romance that Lee and Carley share. This type of relationship adds an amazing degree of character development to both Lee and Carley, which can only make the player wonder, would this type of friendship be shared with Doug? And the simple answer to that is no. Though Doug is kind and caring to Lee, he doesn't offer the same degree of caring and connection that Carley adds. Now, let's take a look at the pros and cons of Carley. Unlike Doug, Carley has excellent weaponry combat skills. Carley is also much more closer to Lee than Doug. Carley has also saved Lee on more than one occasion. As mentioned before, Carley has much more screen time compared to Doug, ultimately giving the player more content. Furthermore, Carley unmasks and presents a different side to Lee that Doug isn't capable of doing. Carley also cares for Lee's well-being more than any other of the characters. Now let's take a look at the cons. Carley can be hostile towards the other players, as seen back at the RV with Lily. Carley also offers less innovative and unique solutions to situations when compared to Doug. And now, without further ado, I will mention which character I believe should be saved instead. The character I believe should be saved instead is Carley. This is because it is clear to me that saving Carley is the canon choice, due to the added screen time and romance that she shares with Lee. That does it for this video, guys. Please make sure to like and subscribe for further Walking Dead analysis videos.